For most of human history, sugar was a luxury soaked in cruelty. It grew only as cane in tropical heat on plantations worked by enslaved people across the Caribbean and the Americas. Whoever controlled those islands controlled the sweetness of the world, and they guarded that monopoly with empires, fleets, and chains. Then a pale root grown in cold northern fields quietly shattered everything. This is the story of the sugar beet and how an unremarkable vegetable rewrote the economics of an entire planet. The beet itself is ancient. The wild sea beet has grown along Europe's coasts for thousands of years, gathered first for its leaves rather than its root. Over centuries, farmers selected sweeter, fatter varieties, but no one imagined a tropical commodity hiding in a temperate garden. That changed in 1747, when a German chemist named Andreas Marggraf placed slices of beet under his microscope and identified tiny crystals of true sugar, identical to the sugar of cane. It was a discovery without a use, a curiosity filed away for nearly 50 years. His student, Franz Karl Achard, refused to let it rest. By 1799, Achard had bred beets with higher sugar content and built the world's first sugar beet factory in Silesia. His yields were small and his finances worse, but he had proven that a nation with no colonies and no tropical coastline could still make its own sugar. The idea waited for a crisis to make it urgent. That crisis arrived with Napoleon. When Britain's navy blockaded continental Europe, cane sugar from the colonies vanished from French ports, and prices soared beyond reach. In 1811, Napoleon ordered tens of thousands of acres planted with beets and decreed the construction of factories and schools to refine them. Almost overnight, an emergency industry was born. When the wars ended and cheap cane returned, much of that industry collapsed, but the knowledge survived, and the beet had earned its place in European soil. To understand its triumph, you have to understand how it grows. The sugar beet thrives where cane cannot, in the cool, damp summers of temperate latitudes. Farmers sow it in spring in deep, loose soil, and through the long days the plant pours energy into a swollen white taproot, storing sugar that can reach nearly 1/5 of its weight. It demands patience, careful weeding, and steady rain, but it asks nothing of the tropics. By autumn, the fields are heavy with roots waiting to be lifted. Harvest was once brutal hand labor, each root pulled, topped, and cleaned by aching backs in the mud. Today, enormous machines do the work, slicing off the leafy crowns, lifting the roots from the earth, and shaking them clean in a single pass. The beets are piled in vast heaps, then carried to factories where they are washed, sliced into thin strips, and soaked in hot water to draw the sugar out. The juice is purified, boiled, and crystallized into the same white grains that once crossed oceans in slave ships. From cold ground to sugar bowl, nothing tropical is required. The consequences were revolutionary. As beet sugar spread across Europe and later North America, the tropical monopoly crumbled. Sugar that had been a symbol of wealth became a staple of every kitchen, and the economic argument for plantation slavery weakened as a free alternative grew in northern fields. By the early 20th century, beets supplied a large share of the world's sugar, grown by farmers who owned their own land in France, Germany, Russia, and the American heartland. A vegetable had done what moral arguments alone struggled to achieve, undercutting an empire built on bondage. Today, the sugar beet remains one of the great quiet crops of the world. It provides roughly 1/5 of all the sugar humanity consumes, grown across millions of acres from the plains of Europe to the valleys of the American West. Modern varieties yield far more than Achard ever dreamed, and nearly every part of the plant is used, the pulp fed to livestock, the residue turned into fertilizer and fuel. It is not glamorous. It does not flower into legend. But this humble root broke a monopoly that armies could not, and proved that the food which feeds the world is often the food we least expect.